Alright, first inking a plate. I have two different plates here that I'm going to ink. I have the Tetra Pak and I have the a piece of plastic. It's the polyester press stuff, but essentially it's plastic. The most important thing is that your ink is stiff. It shouldn't drip off your palette knife at all. You want a really nice stiff ink. If your ink is too thin, it will wipe away when you're wiping the plate. And if it's too stiff, it's just going to be really hard to press around, but it'll stick in your lines. And the reason that I like this media, this ink, this Akua, this is the Mag Mix and the Akua. So with the black, I use 3 parts ink to 1 part Mag Mix to stiffen it. And again, it's because this ink doesn't dry out on the plate, so I have some working time with it. And this is even thinner than I would usually like. I'm just using a piece of cardboard from the recycling bin to spread the ink. If you are using the Tetra Pak, you can use a spare piece of the Tetra Pak to do this, or some leftover mat board, but anything that's a little bit stiffer will work. So that is just spreading the ink on there. Then I would take my tarlatan to wipe the plate. I use in my classroom shop rags because they're cheap and they work. You can use the Akua wiping material. That's really nice. With this stuff, you don't necessarily have to do a hand wipe at the end because it cleans it off really well, but that's the more expensive option than the shop rags. I've also used the brown paper towel at school, and that works. I mean, it gets the job done. So that stuff's finally discovered its use for something. When I wipe, it's balling up the tarlatan, which is what I'm going to call it instead of shop rag, balling it up to a nice kind of firm circle, and it's just really soft touches to the plate in a circular motion. The ink is going to feel a little bit sticky, which is what you want. And I'm not aiming to get it all cleaned off with the tarlatan. I'll hand wipe for that. This is just to get, it's helping to push the ink into those incised lines without wiping it off the plate. When you get too much ink on part of that tarlatan, find a clean spot. And these tarlatans, a nice thing about them is that they wash off really nice with some Dawn dish soap. I've not tried washing them off in my washing machine because I don't want ink in my washing machine. But a sink full of really, really, really high concentrate Dawn dish soap cleans them off. Or honestly, not to create more waste, but they're not terribly expensive, and so it could be just throwing them away. You can get a 5 or 10 pound bag of these at Home Depot for around $15. And I've had one in my class. I've had a bag under the sink in my classroom for 5 years because I only use a couple of them a year. Once you get the plates fairly well wiped, I don't want a lot of ink on the back, so I'm going to move to a clean piece of newsprint. Then you'll take some newsprint, and it can be, I have newsprint, so I'm using that. But if you have old phone books or magazines that have a newsprint type material that they're made of, you can use that. Basically anything to hand wipe down the plate. And the goal of that, it's going to be harder to see because I have some ink on the back, but the goal of that is to clean the surface of the plate. So you want to keep the newsprint at a parallel to the plate that you're wiping, and it's an even pressure, except if you see areas that you can tell have gotten a little bit thicker ink on them, or where there's kind of more ink sticking around, then you can use a more precise, like one finger on it to push and clean it off. And again, if there's ink on the plate, it'll be harder for the paper to move around. So you can actually start to tell that your plate is getting cleaned off when the paper moves a little bit easier on it. And this is where why like the cardboard milk carton stuff doesn't work, because even this step won't pull up all the ink from the texture of the milk carton. Once you have the top of the plate wiped down, you want to get your edges. Otherwise those will leave a border on your paper, which, I don't know, that's, I guess, artistic choice, but traditionally you wipe your edges too. And I either use a newsprint, or I keep a set of, or a container of baby wipes by my desk at school, so that I'm not constantly having to get up and wash things down. And baby wipes would work too. Once you have your plates wiped down, you want to make sure that your hands are absolutely clean, because when you start to touch your paper, your printing paper, you don't want to be spreading ink fingerprints around on it. I use baby wipes. I keep them by my desk, but another option is having a wet soapy like microfiber cloth, because those are pretty good at cleaning off hands and not just spreading around the ink. This ink, once it's anywhere, like on the palette knife or the paper you're spreading it, or on a table, it will get everywhere if it's not cleaned up. So it's really important to have something on your surface. I use newsprint on everything, but if you don't have newsprint, just any kind of scrap paper that you have around, anything to keep your tables clean. You can work right on your table, but if you're working on your table for the wiping and whatnot, you're gonna have to constantly wipe down your table as well. Now I like this paper again and again or this ink, because it won't dry out. I could walk away for half an hour now, do what I need to do, and come back to it, and it'll still be okay for me to print. It won't have dried out on that surface. What I'm going to do next is take my clean towel, grab a sheet of my printing paper that has been soaking for about 15 minutes now. Honestly, I have left some of this paper to soak for days. It's the Richeson 88-pound printmaking paper, and one of the reasons I really like it is because it pulps up a lot. I don't know, that's not the right word, but it plumps up. It has a lot of, I think, cotton fiber in it. Whatever it has in it, when it gets wet, it gets squishy, so that when you put it down on top of your plates, like so, and then start that process of transferring the ink, it squishes down into those lines. So I have my plates down, ink side up, paper on top, and now I'm going to put down some newsprint on top of those. And one hand will always be on my plates and the printing paper, holding it down, keeping it from moving. That's the job of my non-dominant hand. My dominant hand, to hand print, I'm taking a spoon. I have my my finger inside of the spoon, applying pressure, working from the center out, just trying to make sure that I'm getting pressure on all of my plate. And I have both of them under here, so this is a little more interesting. But getting enough pressure on here is going to make sure that, first of all, I get that nice embossed edge of my plate on the paper, which is one of those traits of intaglio prints. And then it's also going to make sure that I'm transferring all the ink. So I'm really pushing that paper into those incised lines to pick up the ink that's inside of them. And I'm possibly moved, but you can pull up a corner to check. This probably isn't going to be the best print ever, but I'm going to pull it up anyway because I don't want a massive printing file. But there are my plates, and I could go wash those off now. And there's my print, so you can see printed very nicely. There's maybe a couple spots needed to clean my plate a little bit better, or the edge of my plate, but that's how transfer is done.